Okay, I've been out in the heat for 2 days now and I've had enough. So I'm going to sit in here and work on finishing 4 of these small builds. The 1999 Eagle, Lance's 1000 refit, the Robbie the Robot, Jack's Vulcan shuttle and base, and 5G. The Galactic is done, all I got to do is finish that base. So check out some of the other video following this, and I'll have another follow-up movie next week. Trying to get as much of this out the door as soon as possible without sacrificing quality. I will be making a full-length video soon, and a video just showing the 350 build-ups, the 350th original series builds, the refit, dreadnought, etc. So check out the rest of the video and I'll catch you later. Oh my, look at all this brass. Oh goodness. Now I used a bunch of this on Lance's refit, and I'm getting ready to put a couple of these together to sell. Yes, sell. I've got to have some money right now to buy some more supplies. I just spent a bunch of money on supplies. But first I wanted to thank my good buddy Big Jim Slade for the pattern work, and my good friend Elliot for the actual brass work. But I also wanted to show you this. Watch closely now. Yes, 50-inch refit brass. These are just some of the details that go with the 50-inch refit. Is that not beautiful? And yes, once again, the patterns are directly from the refit model done by my friend Big Jim Slade, and the brass, once again, by Elliot Brown. Thanks again, Elliot. I wanted to make sure to show this. In fact, I'm going to take this out of the package and show this next to the impulse engine, this in front of the deflector ring, and all these as parts to go onto the nacelles. So yeah, we did think of everything. Thank you very much. More on the 50-inch refit coming soon. Same man channel, same man time. Greetings. Day 1, the Deckard pistol slash blaster prop. PKD, whatever you want to call it. There are 20 different names. I don't care. I'm going to make it. So what I did is I picked up this really cheap electronic toy made in China, naturally, because it looked like a real good facsimile, and yes indeed, it's going to make for a real good study model, and that's about it. I was going to go ahead and just modify this, but I figure if anything worth doing is worth doing right. So I did a lot of research, not going to go into it, came up with 4 different CG versions of this same gun, and opened them up in Pepakura, decided which one I was going to use. Essentially, I'm going to use different parts off of each one. Now, what I've done here is I've taken this all apart, this cheap $7 toy, pulled all the guts out of it and the electronics, and what I was going to do was trace this handle out and cut a piece of 2x4 to be both halves of the handle. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, because when I checked it against a fully scaled prop that I printed an outline of, it's just as I suspected. The handle on this is just a wee bit too narrow. This is great for a kid, but a full-grown man is it's gonna feel small in his hand. Also, I'm gonna have to extend this area where the triggers go because there are 2 triggers, and I need to come up with a much better version of this. I could cut this in half this way and cut it out this way and elongate it, stretch it. I don't know, I may still do that because it's already all there. All I'd have to do is fill in the middle, drill out the holes for the LEDs. We'll see about that. But it's not long enough. As you can see, it should be longer. And the part that was in here is totally useless. This is a pretty good facsimile for the top, but we're not going to use that. I may cut this down, pop this center piece out, and just use that as a template or to go over a piece of dowel rod. Not quite sure. At any rate, as you can tell, I'm pretty much still planning all this out. I've pulled some of the templates out of a couple of different card models that came from the original CG models. 3 of these were video game models used in Fallout and a couple of other games, and one of them was a high-resolution CG model that I could literally do nothing with without tearing it down to the point there was nothing left of it, to make it less involved of a CG model. In other words, fewer polygons, lower resolution. By the time I did that, I already had the video game model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to primarily replace every part of this with wood and create some of the greeblies and whatnot by hand, and use styrene, PVC pipe, and wood to create a studio accurate Deckard's Blaster prop replica. Woohoo! I'm doing this on a contract for a friend who's doing a fan film. I'm also going to be recreating a 1/6 scale Deckard's sedan, police sedan, and or the spinner in 1/6 scale. Alrighty then, there we go. Day 1, Deckard's Blaster. Woohoo! All right, let's do a brief follow-up on the captain's chair real quick before it gets any hotter. I was out in the heat all day yesterday, and about half of it was working on this, so I'm taking a break from the heat today. Now, as you can see, I've got just about everything ready to start assembly on the Madison chair part of this. Now, you can see just the humidity in the air over the last couple of days has warped this. Now, I haven't screwed this in, I just put it in place to show, so I'm going to have to screw all this in together. I've got my shape and bow for the bottom of the Madison chair component, the seat plate. I've got the 2 1/2-inch pieces of plywood shaped and warped the way I want them, screwed together to make for a firm base for this seat. Now, there will be a seat cushion that will go on top of this. What I need to do now, but I'm not going to today, is cut 2 lower back pieces and 2 upper back pieces, and then I can start screwing all of this together. Additionally, as you can see here, I've got a little gap there. Now, when I cut this edge on both sides of this seat plate, after it was cut and formed, oversized, I set the angle on the circular saw to get that angle. Now, what I'm going to do is use a piece of flat wood, exactly the same, only I'm going to cut a 2x4 and cut a little shim to go up underneath there so everything aligns correctly before it's screwed in through the bottom. I'm going to use a shim, epoxy, long decking screws, and 1 bolt. I'm also going to add a support here, as you see in the original Madison chair pictures. Now, after I get everything screwed in tight on the consoles, there won't be any gaps. And what I'm going to do is, I just bought some more paint. I'm going to go over and sand all this one more time, go over it with a couple of thick, heavy coats of paint. Then, when I get all this screwed in together, after all the electronics are done, I'm going to put veneer over the top and down the back and the fronts of each one of these console sides. Then I'll sand everything smooth, paint it the gray that it needs to be, and it will look exactly like the original series captain's chair. Alrighty then, that is enough for today on the follow-up of the captain's chair. Following up briefly on the Aries 1B, I have been going around this entire thing making sure that I get all of these seams perfectly flush and sanded smooth and feathered into each other so that it looks like it was built this way. So there's absolutely no seam at this point, all while maintaining the details all around. I've also been doing some weathering, as you see, and I'm going to be doing some more and try to blend everything in together. Additionally, I've been working on the center ring, the detail on it, the interior detail and lighting, putting a couple of very small pinholes. There is one issue: this does not fit. This does not center and fit the way it should. I'm going to have to heat that and modify it some, and probably put an intermediary ring in here for this to sit flush, and then putty in behind that. This has got a base coat and interior coat. I need to do a little more work on this. I've also been working on the other half of the interior. I've got the upper part of the hemisphere of the top of the Aries all weathered. I don't like this. I'm going to change this. I'm going to lighten this up. And as soon as I get the interior done for the passenger area, I'm going to start working on the interior for the control cabin. I've already got all the engines textured and weathered and looking good. I also went in behind each one of these seams on the top and the bottom side, each 4 sides, and added an additional couple of coats of epoxy and some scrap resin. I'm going to do a bit more of that. I've got the thruster controls ready to add the exhaust ports, and that's about that. That's about it on that. I'm going to show some of the work on the interior either in the next video or in this video. More to come, as always. Here is another brief follow-up on another build, the die-cast Duesenberg. Now I'm going to get this in some slightly different light. See how the light changes the look of the paint? This is Banner Red. Previously I showed how to get all the oxidation off of the die-cast metal, shoot with enamel primer just like a real automobile. This is the base coat. This is Banner Red. I hit this with about 3 coats of base coat. I'm going to lightly sand parts of it with 1500 grit sandpaper, just enough to knock down any of the slight overspray and or bubbling from the heat and humidity. It was like 85 and 60% humidity outside yesterday when I painted this, which is too humid. So I'm going to lightly sand this, mask it off for the 2-part paint job, black and red. Then after I shoot the cherry over it, I'm going to shoot the black over the top. This is going to be 2-tone cherry red and gloss enamel black. More to come. Woohoo! Now here's something I wanted to show real quick. My wife came home with this in a box of stuff that she picked up, I don't know, at a yard sale or flea market. Cheap, cheap, cheap. And it works perfectly, but there are parts missing. So I'm going to strip this down for all the gears, the motor, and the electrical components, electronic components. And I'm going to probably keep the hands, parts of the arms, the head, and a couple of other things to resculpt for something later. Anyway, I might show this when it's all broken down. I might not. You just never know.